Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York invites you to be the informed patient with the podcast that features experts from Central New York's only academic medical center. I'm your host, Amber Smith. Today, we're talking about stress relief with my guest, Susan Allington. She's a licensed clinical social worker at Upstate who is part of the student counseling service. Welcome to the Informed Patient, Ms. Allington.
Well, thank you, Amber, for having me.
Let's first talk about what stress is. What definition do you use?
Well, stress is any kind of pressure that somebody is under. It can be something such as a job stress, academic stress, stressors within relationships. And so it's something that puts pressure on you, something that causes a change in how maybe you think about something or how you physically feel.
It sounds like this is something that could affect people at all ages, right?
Absolutely. I even think of infants when they feel stressed. Their form of getting attention when they're feeling stressed is to cry or to get a little antsy. We continue to do that throughout our life stages. We might present it differently, but everybody from infants into older people, everybody feels stress.
Can you predict when people might feel stress? And I'm thinking with students in particular, exam time
Mhm.
might be an example, right?
Absolutely. Exams are incredibly stressful times for students, especially some of the bigger exams. Like our medical students have an exam called a step exam, and that holds a lot of weight on possibly on where they're going to go in the future. So definitely exam times, match day. I'm not sure if you're familiar with match day for medical students. They find out where they're going to be doing their residencies. Grad students who are defending their dissertations, those kinds of events can create higher levels of stress.
Let's talk about what stress does in our bodies. Does it give us some symptoms that we might experience?
Stress does give us symptoms, and oftentimes we feel the symptoms before we even recognize that we are feeling stress. So it might be your heart beats a little bit harder, maybe your chest feels a bit tighter, the muscle tension in your neck or your shoulders or your back. Sometimes people get stomach aches. You talked about the different ages of people who experience stress. Children will often say that they have a stomach ache. Well, adults can do that too. They might not equate it with stress because maybe they haven't noticed it yet. There are so many different symptoms. One person might have headaches, whereas another person has trouble sleeping.
Is it normal for us to feel stress? Is this part of being human?
It is. It's a big part of being human, and we need stress. Stress is really what helps keep us motivated. It helps also keep us alive, per se. Back in the Stone Ages, we had to fight off the woolly mammoth. We had to have enough stress to keep us in the fight, to keep us alive. And so stress is within all of us. No one is immune to stress, and it's a part of the human condition. And there's different kinds of stress as well. There's the stress that we typically think of, but there's also what we call eustress, which is a good stress, right? It is the stress that keeps us more alert, perhaps, if we are going into an exam and we feel really well prepared for that exam. The eustress might be that motivating piece that keeps us more in tune with what we're doing before maybe an athlete goes out to run a race or be on the lacrosse game. That eustress, that hype, that excitement is also there. So it's not always what we might call bad stress. There's also eustress, which is really exciting because it's not all bad.
You stress YOU, is that what you're saying?
It's spelled EUSTRESS.
You stress, okay. Now, do you differentiate acute stress and chronic stress? Do you see those different?
There is a difference. It's right there kind of in the name where acute stressors are those things that are happening right now. They're short term. It could be going on a job interview or, yes, the stress before an exam. Whereas chronic stress is definitely more enduring. It's having stress about one exam and then having stress because perhaps you're going into a new rotation or clinical, or you're going on a series of job interviews. That's where the stress really starts to build, and it's moment after moment. day after day, week after week.
This is Upstate's The Informed Patient podcast. I'm your host, Amber Smith. I'm talking with social worker Susan Allington from Upstate's Student Counseling Service about stress relief. What physical methods of stress relief do you recommend?
I'm a big advocate for movement. I think movement can be incredibly helpful for everyone. Everybody is different. There's no cookie cutter for what somebody might do. Physical activity is very helpful for managing stress. Even if we shake out our hands, sometimes we might see somebody going into an event and they're shaking out their hands, shaking out their legs. It's a way to release some of that physical stress that can build in our body, gets us ready for the next step.
I know a lot of people who run and they say it's a stress relief too. They'll go for a run and they come back feeling more relaxed.
Absolutely. Physical activity like that, like running, it helps bump up some of those endorphins, all those feel good chemicals that go rushing through our bodies. It's a great way to release stress because number one, it is that physical movement. You are releasing that. Also, it's a form of meditation for a lot of people. And so when they're running, they can work out some things that they might be thinking about, or it's a really great way to be mindful of the run and just let all the stressors of the day go.
Are there mental methods that can help?
Yes, mindful breathing is probably one of the, and I'm going to put this in quote, easiest methods because you can do it anywhere. You can be sitting in a classroom, you could be sitting at work, you could be in the grocery store line and taking a nice deep belly breath, which is inhaling into our bellies and then exhaling. Do that once, do it 20 times if you need to. It's a really great way to release that stress, lower your heart rate, because oftentimes when we feel stressed, our heart rates quicken and it calms our body. It can help also calm our brains and help soothe some of those thinking pieces that just start swirling around in our brain. And so, really focusing on that breath and allowing ourselves to relax.
I've heard that getting good sleep can help with stress relief, but during stressful times, it can be hard to get to sleep or to stay asleep. Do you have any advice?
Sleep is huge, 100%. Sleep is a big complaint when people talk about having stress. And some of the things that are helpful for sleep is having good sleep hygiene, which again, like I said before, there's not a cookie cutter method or a way that somebody might do it, but what works for most, going to bed at the same time every day, before getting into bed, doing things that help lower stress. Read a book, do some calming yoga, stay away from caffeine, probably about 6 hours before you go to bed for most people. Staying away from screens. You don't want to have that blue screen for at least 30 minutes before you go to sleep, because what that blue light does is it keeps our melatonin from getting to a level where we do want to go to sleep.
What is melatonin and why do we need it for sleep?
Melatonin is a hormone that's produced naturally in our bodies. And what it does is it helps regulate the sleep wake cycle, our circadian rhythm, and it signals the body to prepare for sleep.
Is there a point where a person struggling with stress may need counseling?
Yes. If it becomes overbearing, if it's not going away, if they're finding that they are stressed more than what is comfortable for them, if they're finding that their relationships are starting to suffer because they're feeling more irritable, or if they aren't able to sleep and they're working on 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night and they aren't able to get into a good rhythm, a good routine for themselves. If they're finding that their headaches are happening much more frequently, there are so many different reasons why somebody might find that going into counseling would be a good idea for them. And again, everybody has their own limit of the amount of stress that they can handle.
Let me ask you about social media. Do you think that contributes to a person's stress?
It does. We can get so much information so quickly now, and we can find out things as it's happening. When we have all that information coming in, our brains can feel really overloaded, and especially with things like scrolling. We get information very, very quickly in very short bursts that we are overloaded with information. I'm not sure if our brains were meant to take in the level of news and talking with people day in, day out, 24/7, and having that expectation, having so much information at such a quick pace. It's overwhelming for us.
Do you have advice for how people can build resilience so they're not susceptible to stress? I know stress is inevitable, but can you do something so that it doesn't impact you as much?
Having a good routine of what works for you, staying physically active, eating nutritious food, staying well hydrated, staying on top of your sleep hygiene as much as you can, incorporating things into your life that you enjoy, whether it's crafts, hobbies, sports. Do you like to cook? Do you like to color? Whatever that is for you, finding other ways, staying in touch with friends and family is incredibly important. Having that social system around you to support you and to be there for you. Those are some of the best ways to help manage stress. We can always anticipate it's going to happen. However, if we have these skills and we're consistent in using them, then we can help mitigate the level of stress we have or how it impacts us.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you, Miss Allington. I appreciate you making time for this interview.
Well, thank you for having me. This is great.
My guest has been Susan Allington, a social worker in the Student Counseling Service at Upstate. The Informed Patient is a podcast covering health, science, and medicine brought to you by Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York, and produced by Jim Howe, with sound engineering by Bill Brokel and graphic design by Dan Cameron. Find our archive of previous episodes at upstate.edu/informed. If you enjoyed this episode, please invite a friend to listen. You can also rate and review the Informed Patient podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you tune in. This is your host, Amber Smith, thanking you for listening.